Hello and welcome to an episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast with me, Mark Bracknell, Managing Director of Theo James Recruitment. Today, we welcomed on Guy Armitage, the Managing Director of York Handmade Brick. York Handmade Brick are a family-run business. Guy took over as Managing Director 10 years ago. It was ultimately previously his father's business. And we talked about not only the transition to becoming an MD and taking the business forward, but actually the importance of the partnership he has with his father, which was touching, and he talked in detail about his dad being his biggest inspiration and how they just made that partnership work, and actually how the culture of the business has been consistent because they understood not only their partnership but actually the culture of the business moving forward, the values of the business. It's a business with currently 18 people in it, so a nice sweet spot to be an SME. These are the businesses that are the absolute heartbeat of our economy, and often businesses that are forgotten and not supported. So it was a real privilege to get Guy on the podcast today and talk to him about his journey through leadership. We talked about emotional intelligence. We talked about how we get the best out of people. And interestingly, we actually talked about hiring and how he hires people who ultimately stay in their business because their retention is exceedingly good. And we talk in detail about exactly how to do that. But this is one of those episodes where it's just a nice, positive, friendly feel to it for just a really good business, which I was really proud to talk to today. So please, as ever, sit back and enjoy the episode. Please help me like and grow it by liking it, commenting and sharing. But thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the episode. So a massive warm welcome to Guy Armitage, the Managing Director of York Handmade Brick. How are you doing, Guy? Okay?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. And look, really looking forward to this. I absolutely love businesses like this, which are the heartbeat for me of manufacturing and SMEs, and the absolute heartbeat of the British economy, which we'll get into. But first question is the same question that I ask everyone that comes on, which is, what does it mean to you to be a leader, would you say?
Well, I think there's a number of different elements to it, but I think one that I always think is very important is to set a good example. I think how I show up every day is going to set the tone for everyone else. So I need to be showing a good, positive face, if you like. And I think there's a lot to be said for leading by example. I think just as a fundamental principle, I generally try not to. I think you shouldn't ask anybody to do something that you wouldn't if you wouldn't particularly want to do it yourself, if you'd object to doing it yourself.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I think people, particularly nowadays, I think they see through people who ask people to do this when they clearly know, and it's difficult to get respect, isn't it, from doing that. I agree with that, and I felt pressure early doors of being a leader for having to make sure I show up 100%, and I still feel like that, and I still put a face on sometimes. Is that something you've ever struggled with, to go, I've got to be the best version of myself, or in a certain business when you get to a extent, do you feel like you can be your authentic self however you feel? What's the balance like for you there?
Yeah, I think being authentic is really important, and being sort of honest, but equally, I think there is an element of going on. It's like you're going on stage, whether you're selling. It's that, I think it's that thing you should you should imagine who you want to be, especially if you're feeling a bit nervous about something. If you're seeing, if it's something, maybe you're dealing with people you don't know. I think one of the ways that I sort of get over any nervousness is to go, right, just imagine who I want to be, even if I don't necessarily totally feel like that person. I'm confident about that person inside. Make sure I put the I imagine how I want to come across.
Yeah, I get that, because pretty much everyone I've ever interviewed, and massively including myself, and I think we're always winging certain aspects of it. And I think actually there's an element, and that's what good leaders do. I think we haven't always got all the answers to every single question, and I don't think we should ever lie about it. But actually, it's our job to probably find them out, or if not, guide them to do so. And that in itself is leading by example, isn't it? Massively.
Very, very much so. Yeah, yeah.
I mentioned at the start there that I love speaking to people like yourself who are obviously involved in businesses, which, as I say, that the heartbeat of the economy, let's be honest, often forgotten that is the case. Not going straight into politics, but unfortunately, that is often the case that they are, forgotten. But really good businesses, which are doing something great. For those who don't know about the business, do you mind giving me a quick rundown of what you do and any other info that you think might be interesting?
Yeah, we York Handmade Brick, where we make bricks of beauty. Really, I think our purpose is to create beauty and that elevates good design. So not all our bricks are handmade. We started out as handmade, but they're handmade effect. They have the character of handmade that handmaids have. So that's very much still at the core of what we do. But ultimately, I think you can sum it up as making bricks that are going to make beautiful buildings, and that's sort of like the core objective. Just a little bit about the history of the business. We started in 1988. We were initially there were what we very traditional bench throwing, and we mechanized that to a certain extent. We had a good foothold in the self-build market initially. And then from about the 2000s, we got into the commercial sector and have done some wonderful award-winning jobs, such as the Chatham School of Music. Even the Shard has 300,000 of our bespoke bricks made, especially to Renzo Piano, the architect's specification. And we've got more into that sort of work since. So basically, we're split between self-build and luxury residential, commercial city centre type work, and then the sort of heritage type work. And sometimes these things overlap. It might be a commercial building that has a strong conservation. It's conservation sensitive, but certainly that's very much our niche.
Excellent. And am I right in saying family-run business? Your father's business previously, was that right, Guy?
That's right. Very important part. My father, the background to the family is my father was a fifth generation brickmaker. He'd been with Armitage Bricks, which was, I think, founded in the 1850s, and I think originally they started making bricks in 1825. That was sold, but my father had seen the great things that business could do. So he was very committed to brickmaking and wanted to carry on. So he found Orne Brickworks was for sale, and he bought that. And with a guy called Tim Bristow, who persuaded him to invest in the business. Between them, they came up with York Handmade, and then bringing us on to the story that I was telling earlier.
Excellent. And I've been on the website, looked around, in our conversations. It is some beautiful stuff, some of the stuff you're involved in. And this is that again, that you mentioned heritage, and really proud stuff that, as a we have in this country, which unfortunately probably isn't celebrated enough and needs to be, because it's stuff that we need to ensure we back and support, because it's really, really, really crucial. So no, excellent stuff. You obviously came into the business. I'm always interested in the story of family generation businesses and people who have to step up and join the family business. Some people join them, from apprenticeship, from boys. Some will join a bit. You worked obviously in a different, was it banking essentially, and came into it, didn't you? So talk us through that. What was that transition like coming into the family business?
Yeah, that's right. My background was working for HBOS in their IT department. So very different to what I was doing here. But having said that, going back to what you were saying earlier, I think I was 12 when my father bought the business. So a lot of the people that worked here, the factory managers and lots of other people, had known me since I was 12 years old. So you have this sort of quite interesting dynamic when you come in, where everybody thinks you're quite young, but suddenly you're quite senior. Yeah. And equally, I think you find the balance with my father. Initially, you're sort of I'm trying to learn a lot of him, and then gradually I think we spent a lot of time talking about how to hand over sort of bits of responsibility and what he wanted to hand over and what would be good for me to take on, and I think it's it's a really important balance. Strange enough, it's something that lots of people, who your friends and what have an opinion on. And but actually, I think the what I'm really proud of is I know not every father and son partnership is successful. And my father just retired last year. I'd been in the business for 20 years, and in all that time, we got on really well, and I learned an awful lot from my father, and I think it was a very successful relationship. And I think that very much it is about thinking about it and about how you work with each other and allowing each other to do. My father was very ambitious to keep doing certain things. I was very ambitious to not to take on responsibility for things. And so I guess really as with a lot of things in life, I think communication is the key, and we talked about these things a lot, and I think by and large came to the right conclusions.
Yeah, because you're absolutely right. The family businesses, it can be this tricky to, because of that behind it. But it sounds like you've always had that partnership there. You mentioned, how good it was working with your father. What do you think the biggest lessons were that you learned under your dad's leadership, I guess, for a while?
Well, I guess if I was just going to pick out a few off the top of my head, I think he has a very good knack for not seeming too busy. As at the top of the company, I think as a managing director, you can work. You can never have enough time to do everything you want to do. I think my father was very good at having time for every employee, every customer, and never appearing too busy. And I think that's actually quite a skill.
Yeah.
He's pretty good at delegating. That's very, very important. I think he's definitely taught me the importance of delegating to allow yourself to have time to ultimately be the figurehead of the company.
Yeah, 100%. And really key lessons. A lot of people who step into the father's shoes or the grandfather's shoes and whatever, generation businesses feel a certain pressure to perform, probably more so than not a fine business, because the pressures, there's an emotional attachment there as well. How did you deal with that? And is that something, I guess, is ongoing or something you had to initially deal with?
I think to be honest, I'd had a bit of practice in
Yeah.
my old life. I'd been on graduate fast track schemes and things like that, where it's not a totally different thing. You're being thrown in sort of at the deep end. There's lots of older, you're a sort of young, fresh-faced graduates, and you're dealing with lots of older, more senior people that and sometimes in some places having to tell them what to do. So I'd sort of got used to that angle. I would say because of the nature of the business here, I was very well supported. I think my father very much didn't interfere in the detail of things. And I think, very senior people in the company, like the factory managers, Steve Pittam in particular, were very supportive, very patient with me in explaining things that I didn't necessarily know about. But I think when you're in that position, it's important not to be afraid to ask, and and I think have confidence that you will be supported, so I think it is very much about having a sort of two-way relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
But I'm also plenty of confidence as well.
Yeah, and imagine the transition for obviously you becoming managing director and your dad obviously leaving the business. That in itself is a new chapter, and and scary, but also quite exciting. Imagine to be able to have that autonomy to do that. Presumably, obviously, I'm sure still with his support in some sort of background sense in that sense. How you've come from a background which obviously is a very different world. It's a big corporate beast. It's a very different machine. What's it been like transition to to small business? I mean, size of the business now, Guy. How many people are on site as it stands?
I think at the moment we've got 18 employees.
Okay, so nice small business where it'll have that family feel to it as well. Everyone, and that's a skill in itself. What's for a lot of companies are in that and want to get to a certain headcount or growth, and similar size business to mine, and actually a lot of companies stay in that area. What from potentially maybe experience you've gained before you've come into this business, what do you think the difference is between a business now and a business getting to that to 20 to 30 to 40? Is it a different process? Is it a different culture? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's an interesting question because we've probably I think we've got a smaller headcount than we had certainly 20 years ago and probably even 15 years ago. That's partly because we've mechanized deliberately. I think that the sorts of manual work that we have in the factory, I think we've recognized that there's with health and safety laws, there's repetitive strain, injury risks and things like that. So we've invested in things to mitigate that. But yeah, to go back to your question, what's important about having slightly more people? What do you do for growth and that kind of thing? I think it is important to understand who you can, what size of group you can effectively communicate to. I think that certainly we've probably got a leadership of about 5. I think that's a really good number to directly communicate to, and then I think the next number is sort of about 25. So again, that's always worked quite well for us because we've never really been. I mean, I think we probably had 30 at the most, but those are quite good numbers in terms of the hierarchy structure. I think if we wanted to get to 50 people or 75 or something like that, I think we'd have to have a real think about the management structure and how we and certainly at the moment I think I'm in a situation where I can pretty much go around the factory and say hello to every person in the company and they can directly communicate to me, and that's great, but it does mean the communication challenge isn't the same as if we had 50 people, then I definitely wouldn't be able to go around and say hello to every person in the business on a sort of almost daily basis.
Yeah, you know what? I think the industry has changed. I think grow. I think good look used to look like how big is your headcount, and that is very much it's changed. And I think you've got obviously your automation processes change that tied to it is expensive now to have people, and I think we've seen a reduction in headcount over the last sort of 18 months, I would say, across construction and manufacturing for obvious reason. But actually, I think it's now changed to process is much more important. What can we get out of these people? How can we create an environment and a culture where they're happy and they're thriving and they want to stay within the business? How much, out of interest, how much do you talk about culture? As a leadership team, is that something spoken about?
I think we do. I don't think we're necessarily always that aware that we're talking about it. We don't necessarily say let's have a culture meeting about culture today. But I think we're very aware of how things are perceived, particularly with employees, but all stakeholders of the business. So yeah, I think there's again, it comes back to this thing about the size of, because we're quite a small company, we can have informal conversations about how certain things are going to be perceived. Is that how we want the message to come across? And so informally, I think it's something that we consider to be very important, particularly, of course, to our customers, but actually internally with our employees. And yeah, I think it's something that we actually talk about a lot. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm always interested in people's leadership journeys and how that's evolved over time. And sometimes people don't think about it until they're forced to in situations like this, where someone like me is asking the question. So, I mean, out of interest, how do you think your leadership has evolved over time? If you think back to when you started versus now, what are the key lessons, or what are even the key challenges you've had along the way? 'Cause I think sometimes they're good to reflect on.
I think it's really important to sort of gauge who I think change your how you do things for the individual, or sort of tailor. There's some individuals that you would take a completely different approach to get the most out of than others, and I think it's really important not just to sort of treat everybody as if they're the same, but treat everybody as an individual and think about what that individual sort of wants and what's going to get the most out of them.
Yeah, excellent stuff. So, was that something you had to learn the hard way, so to speak, or is it just something you've always been quite confident in?
Yeah, I think to some extent, I think the more experience you get, you go with that person. I'm really going to have to put in a lot of work, and I think that they're going to need a lot of help, and I probably need to get quite involved. And then with other people, you think actually they do not want me to. I don't want to be interfering with them. They're very
Yeah,
competent. The best thing I can do is let them get on with it, show an interest in them and showing it. I mean, it's always important to show an interest in what people are doing, but ultimately, that person, I'll let them get on with it. That person, I can see they need a bit of help, and it's probably more important that I support them a bit more closely.
and that it's emotional intelligence, isn't it? And which 20, 30 years ago, I appreciate it's just a term, but I don't. It wasn't as prevalent as it is now, to have that way of management. It was before, it was much more, it was my way or the highway. And I think that's how leaders did. And that it just doesn't, thankfully, it just doesn't ride anymore. People need a manager who's actually going to listen to them and exactly that, going to understand that if there's something happening externally, which is meaning they are not dealing with their day to day how they typically are. And I think it is easier when you're a small business, but it's still a leadership trait that can be taught and can be learned with experience, isn't it?
Very much so, and I think you notice and learn a lot from managing different people from different generations. So that
Yeah,
the I would say there's probably it's a bit of a generalization, but there's more sort of deference to authority from older generations, but equally, younger generations, and I don't know whether it's something that just comes with youth and changes as people get older, but I think with youth certainly. They're perhaps not so appreciative of that, if you like, but you can get a lot by listening to what they've got to say and giving them some freedom to do what they think's a good idea, and that equally can get really rewarding results.
yeah, 100%. Apologies for interrupting this episode with a very quick announcement about my business. Theo James are a specialist talent provider specifically to the manufacturing and engineering sector. I am incredibly proud of what we've achieved since our inception in 2015. We specialize in roles from semi-skilled trades right the way up to our TJ exec search arm of the business, both on the contract and permanent side. We offer both bespoke one-off campaigns for hard-to-fill roles or a full partnership service where we become an extension of your business. For any information, please get in touch with me or the team. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Thank you. The last 10 years has been challenging in a lot of our industries, to say the least. There has been, if someone had said to you 10 years ago, we're going to have Brexit, we're going to have COVID, we're going to have wars, we have supply chain chaos, all this type of stuff, you've probably gone, no. It just has seemed, it still seems like it's something after another, and it's so many challenges as companies and leaders we've had to pivot and to be agile. What's been the biggest change or biggest barrier that you've had to overcome as a business, you think, since you've been there?
Well, I mean, there's got a few things to choose from.
Yeah, there
Um,
is.
I
Unfortunately,
mean,
there isn't
and,
there?
and and you can look at it in different ways. I mean, just in very tangible ways, if you like. In our industry, the increase in the cost of energy has been a massive change and a
Yeah,
and a big challenge for anybody in industry. I think we've had a lot of new regulations. Some of them good. They're not all for the worst. But I think whenever they arrive, new regulation always presents a challenge, or I would say almost a fear of dread. You're like, what have they done? What have
yeah,
they done now? And what's interesting is normally after you've worked through it, it's in my experience, it's never normally quite as bad as you think it's going to be, when you've worked out what they actually want. And actually, a lot of the challenge is just getting your head around how little you need to do and not sort of gold placing it and doing far more than is actually required and making a real chore of it, if you know what I mean. But yeah, regulation has certainly been a challenge. I think that there've been changes in the attitudes of the workforce, the labour market, and I think certainly it is. I think it's got harder to recruit. I would say, but equally, when you can find the right people, and we have. I think a lot of our success at the moment. I think we've got a really good team, and that is quite a lot of that is down to being patient about finding the right people. So, it's very often it's getting a round peg in a round hole. And but certainly that's been a challenge we have had to be patient with. But I would say, we have got a very good team there in the end, so it's been worth persevering with.
Yeah, and that's great to hear. And actually, I think a lot of people listening going, we're struggling. We're struggling with finding good people, and it is a problem. I'd like to pick your brains on that if that's okay, because I think you're absolutely right. There has been a lot of round peg, square hole, not round peg, round hole. And I think people have just hoped and presumed and gone with their gut that people work out and, probably ignored things they shouldn't have. That doesn't happen by accident. So how have you done that? You think you mentioned the patience piece, which is interesting in itself, but how have you found good people for your business? Because it is one of the biggest holes in a lot of people's business, that they just either can't find people or they're finding the wrong people and wasting a lot of time.
I think to some extent they find us. You appoint people, you have an interview. You don't really know that much about them at the end of the interview, and the amount of times I've been sat there with the recruitment consultant, and you go through and you do think, I really don't know. And you just have to pick someone. But I think you can soon realize if somebody really appreciates their job. That doesn't take that long to work out. And if they and you can also, I think you can also quite soon work out if somebody is struggling with their job, and they can be trying really hard, but you can sort of start to get this niggly feeling. You really wants it to work out for them, but you're like thinking, no, this person is, I don't think they're right for the job. And I think it is really hard, but the right thing to do, to say at a really early stage, I'm really sorry, I don't think it's working out.
Yeah.
And not to, I think if you were asking about maybe things I've learned and mistakes I've maybe made. I think in the past I've maybe persevered with people for too long who haven't been right for a job. And then you look back and think, I don't think I wasn't helping the company, and I don't think I was helping them either, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I massively resonate with that, because I think, personal experience as a lead, I really want people to do well. I don't want people to fail, and I think sometimes if you see someone failing, there's something in you to go, I can help them, I can help them, and this is the one.
Yeah.
Like, this is one that just they'll get there. They just need some support, and they often don't, unfortunately, is it? And that is. It's difficult putting your business head on sometimes, isn't it? And trying to be a bit more data led with certain things. But that, I think, it's another leadership lesson, isn't it? That you've got to make the right decision for the business, which is normally the best decision for them, because if it's not right, it's not right, and there's nothing you can do about it sometimes, is it?
Yeah, I think to some extent it hurts your own sense of pride.
Yeah.
You kind of think, as a manager, I should be able to get this person to succeed and overcome
Yeah.
their problems. And I think sometimes in the cold light of day, you just have to go, no, they're just not the right person for here, and you just have to make the decision, and that can be hard sometimes.
Some people believe in interviewing people very technically in terms of skill set wise. Some people believe it's more about the values and the attitudes. What are your thoughts when someone's in front of you and you're hiring for the business, and particularly a business like yours, because no one can hire in a business of 18 people. They need to be right, and everyone will. It's the classic, you're only as good as the weakest person, and so everyone will see that. How do you know what good looks like when you're hiring for the business?
Think there needs to be. I think it's really important that they're a good fit for the job, that they're going to be really grateful for the job. So you can have, I don't know, somebody who's technically brilliantly qualified, but if actually they know they could earn more money somewhere else, or they could, they've got ambitions to be somewhere else, or that it's not going to fit their family life or the location that they live at, it's not going to work. Then that's for me, that's the most important thing. I think you need to be going, this person's at a certain stage in their career where, or whatever it is, where this is going to be a really good fit for what they, for their personal goals. Whether it's the family, fitting in their family life, whether it's what they want to achieve at work, what it is. And I think where if you're lucky enough at interviews to be able to see, yeah, this person's a really good fit, I would rather take a chance on the technical skills or whatever it is, because I know somebody's going to really appreciate having the job, that we can train them and so on, than have to have somebody who's sort of qualified to the nth degree to do what you're doing.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because I think, and I don't know if I've said that here before, but it makes sense to you that, they have to be great. And I think some people might go, they have to be grateful, but I agree with you, because actually it's as business owners, it's our job to create an environment where people want to come to work and be happy. And if we work very hard to do that. So if we create that environment, then I completely agree. You hire people who are grateful to work in that, because ultimately, without that, there's sometimes a level of entitlement, and it's very hard to train people like that and bring those people into your culture. Because I think good businesses, the best businesses I see, are the ones where the leadership team would run for a brick wall for the team, and vice versa, and that creates a good culture of a company who are loyal to each other, and typically there you see the best retention rates. I agree that if you get people who just know they can walk out for £1, £2 more, whatever it is, then they typically do. But it's the people who are really grateful for their employees and what the employees have put in front of them, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I think our business has been through quite a tough time recently. But one of the things which I've found really uplifting is the loyalty of the team that we've got. They've basically, everybody's stayed with us, and I think that says a lot about them as employees and individuals. And it's something that I'm very proud of.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, but hard to answer this question. But why do you think they've stayed with you?
Um, I think they like the business. I think they're all good at their jobs. I think if you know inside you're good at your job, that's a good reason to want to stay. And I think the size of business that we are and the type of management that we have, I think my father was very important, in that I think he was a very good boss. I think everybody respected him. Everybody knew how committed he was to the business. He was putting his own money in. He sold his house, so on and so forth, and they knew how committed he was to brickmaking. And so I think that generated a huge amount of loyalty. And I think we respect, I think my father and myself, I think we respect the people working for us, that that they are good, and they're very good at what they do. And actually, quite often the best thing we can do is let them do their jobs how they want to do them, because they do it very well.
Yeah. And so you're obviously passionate about the business, but you're obviously passionate about the industry as well. The industry of bricks and ceramics and all that comes with it. What, for people who don't know much about that industry, what are the misconceptions, or what would your thoughts be on that? Because it is one of those industries where I think you've got to work in it to really understand it. There's certain things happening or challenges at the moment that I guess you're having to work through, or even opportunities for that matter.
Sorry, just repeat the question again. Sorry.
So it's an industry I think you've got to work into to understand. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know about it. What are the current challenges you see,
Yeah.
or opportunities to some extent, either or, that you're seeing or facing at industry at the moment? And it could be good or bad. There, it could be either side.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of it is whether they're opportunities or threats. A lot of it depends how you view it.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
view it in a positive way or a negative way. I think there is an opportunity, if you like, on the environmental standpoint. I think
Okay.
inherently brick has a lot of really good things going for it, and that's why it's been around for 5,000 years. There's the thing that people point out is you need fossil fuel. You've got to fire the bricks to 1,000 degrees. So there's a lot of embodied carbon in a brick. Where I think the opportunity is for us to cut that. We ourselves are looking at recovering heat from the kilns in a state-of-the-art modern way. We're looking at relationships with our neighbours, which might help us maybe get a private wire connection for electric because they're generating electric. But that's something that's something that we can do because of the geography of the site. There's an opportunity there. Just in the wider industry, I think the first kiln in the UK certainly that fires bricks purely on hydrogen. So effectively, that's sort of
Yeah.
carbon free if the hydrogen is made with renewable energy. So that I think then that shows us that we can all get to net zero by 2025 in brick making, and there's a really good future. So I think there's lots of opportunities to make our product not just there's different strands to sustainability. I think not just environmentally sustainable, but I think there's only 25 bench handmade brick makers left in the UK.
Wow.
The Heritage Crafts Association do a survey, and so I think we can continue to have people who have these skills, but we need to embrace the modern technology to enable us to do that in the modern world. So there's heritage sustainability, and then that leads to the sort of financial sustainability of what we're doing. So I think definitely there's lots of the challenges are high energy, higher material costs, higher labor costs, but I think the opportunities are embracing new machinery, new technology. And everybody talks about AI. I'm talking about more, maybe
Automation.
more sort of mechanical automation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Embrace these things. Don't see them as sort of threats that other people are doing and we can't do. I think we need to embrace them, tailor them to our particular niche, and I think that way, we can make sure that we've got a specialism that's needed in the market.
Yeah, brilliant and really well put. And what are you excited about in the next sort of 12 to 18 months in the business? What's happening? What's on the agenda?
Wow, there's lots. I think we've been developing new products, but I think we're bringing those to market. One that I'm particularly excited about is we're developing a new range of buff bricks. And buff and greys, I think they're very much wanted in the market, but also because we've invested £1.5 million in a new machine, when, to be honest, a lot of brickmakers were not wanting to invest because it's hard times. But so we now have this state-of-the-art machine. It can make new textures, lovely, what we call water-struck finish. I think there's only two other factories in the UK, but we can do it in different size formats, sort of long, thin bricks, the different textures. And so that makes some really exciting permutations of brick that you can only get from York Handmade. And I think for the architectural specification market, I hope that's really exciting to that sector of the market that we're very much targeting.
Yeah, it is. And I think one of the biggest lessons in there as well is, and I know it isn't always possible, but if you can invest because that, like you say, there is a change coming and we have to embrace it. And whether I think automation is just a necessity.
I think we made the investment before COVID. Really, we made a decision to invest before COVID, and then after COVID, of course, there was a huge labour shortage, particularly straight after to COVID. And I think that there still is now. It hasn't really changed much. I don't think we could have got through without having the new machine that's able to make the bricks with a slightly a smaller number of men. I think we'd hoped our volume and our market would grow, But what we've been able to do is maintain what we were doing with fewer people, and actually that's been absolutely essential with the challenges that I don't think anybody foresaw with the increase in labour costs and such and things like that. But it has enabled us to deal with them.
Excellent, amazing, and thank you so much, because it's been fascinating. Because as I say, I'm always fascinated by family-run businesses, because I just think that itself is and I love how well you've spoken about your father and your dad, and that is, I would say it's rare, but it's definitely not common. You know, there's you know, sometimes that doesn't run so smoothly. So the fact you've got such a good partnership and you've been able to take the business on, I think in itself is excellent. And obviously it's these are the businesses these are the SMEs and the businesses that prop up the economy, and we need to support and we need to help, and should never be neglected. So I think, you know, I would, and I've been on the website, it's amazing. So I'd urge everyone to go on there and have a look, because some of the stuff you're producing is brilliant. And I just think really enjoy talking to you about your journey and the business and the culture behind it. And I think there's loads of little lessons there that I've taken away. So thanks, guys. It's been great. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Mark. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for listening or watching this episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast. Please just like or subscribe. It really helps grow the show and obviously improve the industry. If you want any more information about Theo James, as I mentioned midway through the episode, please get in touch with me or the team. I would love to talk about how we can help you directly or your business. We are more than just a recruiter, and I know people say that, but it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. We are in business for much more than just a bums on seats approach. We want to help people grow. We want to help improve their lives. And ultimately, I want to work with businesses and people who share the same values as we do. And that's something I'm incredibly passionate about. So please, if that is you and you are passionate about that dream role or passionate about your people, please get in touch with me or the team. I would absolutely love to talk a bit more detail. Thank you very much. Speak soon.